Welcome to another program of the Jubilee Museum series. Today's show will feature rare and notable books in the museum's collection. I'm Wanda Dangle, your host, with Sean Kinney, Executive Director of the Jubilee Museum, who will be speaking to us remotely from Columbus, Ohio at the museum. Welcome, Sean.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having me again.
What books do you have with you, and what would you like to spotlight first?
Yeah, so we today have several beautiful books here in front of us. One of the books kind of changed history a little bit, starting with the Gutenberg Bible, which was the first Bible ever on the printing press, which Johann Gutenberg invented. We also have here a Bible from 1558, printed in Paris, France. It's a Vulgate Bible. And what's cool about this Bible is printed by the first woman-owned printing press. And she had many awards for her beautiful artwork and very little mistakes in these Bibles. Early books had a lot of mistakes, so hers was actually known for the cleanliness in the language. And we also have a 1582 Reims New Testament. Many of you out there will have probably heard of the Dewey Reims Bible before, but the Reims New Testament from 1582 was the first ever in English, which is pretty cool. And then we'll finish up with the 1611 King James Bible as well. So, and I know, Wanda, you've got a bunch of information on that beautiful cover you're going to talk about later. So,
well, which one would you like to look at first?
Well, if I can play favoritism a little bit, we'll start with the Gutenberg Bible, which is actually one of my favorite ones here. When you come to the museum, we actually have a Bible collection here. And this one here...
Could you show the Gutenberg engraving?
So this is the Gutenberg Bible. Many of you have heard of this before. It's even been featured in movies. Many of you have probably seen the movie Day After Tomorrow before. They're in the scene in the library where they're hunkered down from the storm outside. And one of the librarians is holding a book in the corner sitting in a chair. And they ask him what the book is, and it's the Gutenberg Bible. And they do indeed, in the big library downtown New York City, have a Gutenberg Bible in their collection. But a beautiful Bible printed in 1455, 1450-ish, somewhere in there. There's some question about that. It took several years to really get going with these. But of course, Johann Gutenberg invented the printing press, and he obviously chose the Bible as his first works to print. So a very beautiful piece. These are very valuable. There wasn't really very many printed either. So I know, Wanda, you have a couple slides that I can kind of maybe, when those come up, talk a little bit about as well.
To see the Gutenberg Museum or the printing press?
If we can pull up the printing press first, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. We have an illustration of what the printing press looked like.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. There it is. So Johann Gutenberg invented this printing press made out of wood. We've got the typeset, which were little letters. Every letter had to be, set in to form the sentences and the words. And there's also some photos there of the Gutenberg Museum as well, where they have the printing press still. These were heavy machines, not easy to operate, and it took several people to do this. Very tiresome. But you would set these beautiful lead letterings out in order. And obviously, you had to place the paper. And when you come to the museum here, you kind of get a neat experience. We let you actually touch a historic manuscript from 1717. It's a commentary on the Bible. And there's a huge difference between paper we have today and the paper they were using back in the old days. The primary difference is there was no chemical. Today we have acetones and different things in the paper. So that's why, for instance, if you have a newspaper clipping from your childhood, and you'll notice it's turning yellow and starting to crumble a little bit. It's because of the chemical in the paper. It's not going to last. These beautiful old books are going to outlast what we have today. That's because it was all natural materials, Wanda, completely natural materials and fiber, or it was parchment or calf skin as well, so using what they had available.
If you look at the typeset that we just had, could you bring that back up, please? Thank you. You'll notice that these are individual letters and that they are rods that are placed in so that you create an entire sentence. It's not, some people have the illusion that a whole word was written, but each word was made up of individual rods, as you see in this.
Right. And actually, Johann Gutenberg, on top of inventing the printing press, he also invented, it's not easy. If you're carving each one of these little letters out, every A might look a little different. So he actually came up with a mold system that he invented. So each one could be poured in this mold and used over and over. So all the A's match, all the B's match, all the C's match. So you have, some unison going here in the language. So that wasn't an easy thing either, but he did patent that as well, the mold for making these lead dies for the typeset. So, but very beautiful, and this is a neat thing you can experience there at the Guttenberg Museum as well. And I know you've been there, Wanda, if you maybe want to tell us a little bit about that.
Well, from what I remember, the printing press is a replica because the original was used for firewood. Yep. And luckily, fortunate for all of us, that Gutenberg had made a sketch of his printing press before he actually put it together. And that's what they used to recreate his original printing press. Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you, it's just watching the two ladies here, you can see how intense this machine was to operate. And what's even more special for the book we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, a woman-owned printing press. This was a difficult thing. Men struggled with this, men who were, working out and strapping, and just an amazing, work of art and an amazing piece of machinery. But again, heavy machinery. Everything was labor-intensive back in the old days. We didn't have the little, print button on the computer, and it just comes out beautiful for us. It was very labor intensive. In fact, this photograph that I took, that woman had to brace one leg against the printing press to have enough force to pull the arm of the press, and that you had to do that for every page that you printing is pretty amazing. You had to have muscles behind, that printing. Absolutely. So obviously the Gutenberg Bible here was on the Gutenberg printing press. And just to give you a little history behind this, so before you could do anything, you had to make the paper. So some of you remember probably in art class as a child, you may have taken a bunch of old recycled paper and put it in a blender, and then they put it in a big vat with water, got it real pulpy. Then you'd run a screen through it that was formed to the shape of the paper, press all the water out, flip it over, and let it dry. There's your homemade paper. And they would use different things, husk and wheat and fibers from, animals and whatnot. Every once in a while in some of these old books, you'll actually see a full hair or fiber in it. But all natural materials. Today we can't, first of all, it's labor intensive. You can still buy real homemade paper, but one reason they add chemical to the paper today is for strength. You cannot run that old paper through a printing press or making newspapers today at 100 miles an hour. It would rip and fall apart. But again, the natural materials are going to outlast time. But once you got that done, just a piece of knowledge here, Gutenberg printed between 160 and 190 of the Gutenberg Bibles. It's not quite sure how many were printed. But once that was done, you had to set the typeset for the page, print all the pages. So you obviously you weren't going to print a whole Bible and then go back and do it again. So you would print as many as you were going to make from the one page and then start with the next page. And then we have all this beautiful color here. This wasn't going to happen from your Lexmarks at home. You had to go back in and stencil this in and then hand add all the color and hold it up a little bit here. Now this Bible we have is an exact replica. It is not an original. I would love to have an original. On the market today, the Gutenberg Bibles run about $12 million. So if you find one in a half-price bookstore, please call me. I'll find the benefactor. I always tell our tours that little joke, and they think it's pretty funny. But a beautiful piece, and there's still 49 of these in existence today. And the sad part is only 21 of those are completely intact. So
one thing a lot of book collectors do is they'll take these books, and not just Bibles, but beautiful Gregorian chant leaflets and antiphonals and things. They'll cut the pages out, and then they'll sell the individual pages in antique malls, which is really sad because it destroys these beautiful original books. And another interesting fact, Wanda, is the Gutenberg Bible was in 2 volumes. So we do have both volumes here at the museum. It would have been a really, really big book, and that would have been a lot of stress on the binding. It would have been hand done, obviously. So we put it in 2 volumes so you wouldn't do the damage on it. So.
Could we look at the first Bible published by a woman?
Absolutely.
Do you have that nearby?
I have it right here. So this is a really neat piece, and now this is not a copy like the Gutenberg was. This is actually 1558, and you'll see here this beautiful cover. This cover is leather, stamped leather. So same kind of situation as the printing press. This would have been a metal plate that they would have, done by hand, and then pressed the entire plate against this leather and probably left it for a while, maybe even a couple days. And then you'd have this nice indentation. So very beautiful. The time that they spent back in the old days, not just on books, but wood carvings and anything old that we would think of as old today. There was time and compassion went into making these beautiful pieces. So we have beautiful brass clasps here. Obviously, they're tarnished from the age. And then on the end here, this book has a little bit of damage, but you'll see we have really thick bindings. Really, really thick. This was heavy paper, so you had to make sure you had a heavy binding. When we open it up here, like the title page here. So again, this was printed in Paris, France. It's a Latin Vulgate Bible, 1558, and the New Testament. It's very beautiful.
We have
there's been a little writing here added with a quill pen at one point, which is pretty neat. I can probably get a little closer to the camera to help you guys a little bit.
Could you turn the page and
absolutely
see what the next page is like?
So this here is kind of the layout of the book, a little bit of an index, if you will, of kind of how to guide yourself through the book. Very interesting. And then coming into here, she was really known. Charlotte was really known for her books because she added a lot of color and detail to them. Not color, I'm sorry, but just detail work. It's very artistic. When we think of beautiful art today, especially if you're Irish, think of the Book of Kells, just overloaded with beautiful artwork. And, this is not just these early Bibles artwork. Even our Bibles today have beautiful color images as well. But, really helps the mind think and just adds to the beauty of what you're reading.
I think we have a couple images of Charlotte's work.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Absolutely, there it is.
There you see her name. And there's one from one book. And then here is another one of her works. So what do you have next?
And one other thing I want to point out, this was commissioned by the Bishop of Verona. That she actually did this as well, so it was commissioned by him. And but known for her accuracy, so very beautiful. So we want to probably go into the New Testament here, the reign. And so this is actually a very beautiful book and a different time. And I'll have you talk a little bit about this too, Wanda. But the first ever New Testament in English. I'll hold it up here. This is an original book here in our museum. The cover is not original, as with a lot of these old books. But the pages themselves are beautifully intact. We'll see if we can get this to... Is that coming through at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can see it.
Very good. Get a little closer. So printed in Reims in 1582. This is a beautiful book. And this is just kind of a fun fact, Wanda. I don't know if this is true or not. We might have some viewers want to call in or send us an email. But you'll see New Testament. The the W is two V's put together.
Mm-hmm.
So a double U.
Oh, yeah.
So I've heard that before. So
I've heard that as well.
So the early W is just two U's put together.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, this is very early English. I tell my English teachers or any of the tour groups that come through us, if you're an English teacher, this might drive you crazy, the way the spellings are done and the punctuation and whatnot. But still, a very beautiful book. And I know a lot of people recognize the Dewey Rheims. So in 1582, this was put out, just the New Testament in English. It wasn't until the early 1600s that this was put together with the Old Testament. And I know, if you want to talk a little bit about that, Wanda, I know you have a map there and whatnot.
Yes, let's look at the map.
There it is.
In the lower left-hand corner, you can see Paris. And if you go diagonally northeast, you see Reims, or as many people pronounce it. And that's where the Bible that you just showed us was published. Then if you travel north to the Red Star, there is Douay, and that's where the Old Testament was published. Douay was considered had a scholarly reputation, and that is the reason why the Bibles were published in those two places. The New Testament was published first, and that's what you have. You have
Correct.
The older book, and the Old Testament was published later. I think that was 1609.
Yeah, I believe that was because of budgets. They money situation. People have got to remember that these early books were very, very expensive. Obviously, we talked about they were labor intensive, but they were very expensive. You could not own a book at that time just as a layperson unless you were, in today's standards, like a millionaire. The churches had to save money for a long time to buy them, monasteries. Because before the Guttenberg Bible, if you wanted a Bible or any kind of book, they were handwritten. And the museum does not have a handwritten Bible yet, but we'll have one day. Hopefully we can show people that. But it's just an amazing time and a complete change going from handwritten books to printed books. And again, I did open this New Testament up here just to show you what one of the pages would look like.
And that was not illuminated like...
Not at all. Every once in a while you'll see this little, the first letter here with
right.
the real script. But that was about it in this book. Nothing like Charlotte's 1558.
Or those that were written in Latin.
Right, absolutely.
Let's take a look at a picture of the Latin version with its illumination.
Yeah, look at that. That is just beautiful. Mm-hmm. And of course, the Gutenberg Bible was in Latin. We forgot to mention that earlier. A lot of people ask what language that is.
And it was translated into the Latin by my fellow Croatian Saint Jerome.
I think the picture just popped up of Saint Jerome there.
That's right. He was.
You got to say that, Wanda. You're the Croatian. You're lying.
Well, it was part of the Roman Empire, but it is part of Croatia. You can locate it in Croatia today. Let's look at the final Bible that you have, which is what?
So this is the 1611 King James Bible. And if you want, Wanda, if you want to start with the image you have of the front cover and explain that, and I'll slide this copy that we have over, so when you're finished with that, we can go into this. So there's the inside cover. I do not have it opened up to that, but Wanda here has a fantastic image of the inside cover. And explain a little bit, Wanda, what's going on here.
Well, if you look up the top where the dove is located, right above it are 4 letters, and in Hebrew you always read from right to left. So you have the letters Y, H, W, H, which would stand for Yahweh, the biblical name for God. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. This front cover is so full of images that translate into beliefs. For instance, in the four corners, you'll see the four gospel writers. There's Matthew on the upper left-hand corner, and right behind him is the angel, which is a representation of Matthew, and then right across from him is Mark, and you'll see next to Mark, I don't have my glasses on. What is his symbol? The lion.
Yep.
And then down at the bottom, on the left, is Luke with the ox, his symbol, and John, the symbol of the eagle.
Right.
And then, if we look closely here, we see Peter with the keys and Paul, and then the other apostles, and they're all kind of looking toward the center, except for one. Oh, let me look, let me find another. Okay. Except for one, and that we are assuming that apostle is Judas.
Right.
Also on this page, you can see on the left is Moses with the tablets, and across from him is Aaron. So it is just beautifully illustrated with a lot of symbolism. And you could spend a whole program on just the illustrations in some of these books.
And they're very beautiful. And I tell you, back in 1611, to have a book like this or any kind of manuscript that had artwork like this, would have been huge for you. It's amazing here, just showing people, a player piano or an early, Victrola record player or a phonograph, that was amazing. What we consider today, just as a simple piece of art, we kind of take for granted. But this was a huge thing back then to have this beautiful artwork. And of course, the symbolism in the church wasn't just in the Catholic Church. In the early Lutheran Church, and even through today, the Methodist Church, the Church of England, here with Queen Elizabeth I, symbolism was very heavy and very beautiful. So as you were mentioning, the different animals that correspond there, it's very cool. Obviously, St. Peter depicted holding a set of keys. And Jesus didn't literally hand him a set of keys and say, here you go, use these to get into heaven. Symbolic for, you have the knowledge to get in. And then again, obviously, we always see St. Paul depicted with a sword and a book as well. So, so beautiful symbolism in the church, and that carries in to these beautiful books as well. Now, in front of me here, I do have a early, this is an original copy of the 1611. Probably not an old copy, but an exact replica copy. I'll hold it up here a little bit. And something interesting, an interesting fact for you about the King James Bible. It was commissioned by Mary Queen of Scots' son, James I, who was on the throne at this time. And many of you know Mary Queen of Scots' story.
Could you show the picture?
Yeah. And we do here at the museum have, there he is. We do have Mary Queen of Scots, his mother's necklace here in the building. I think we had that on last time. But a beautiful, beautiful piece, and obviously martyred for the Catholic faith. But James was raised by Elizabeth I, and obviously carried the Church of England on. And there she is. Many of you know she was known as the Virgin Queen. She never had an heir to the throne, and she knew Mary Queen of Scots' son was the heir to the throne. So, but he did put together the King James Bible, this first edition of 1611. And a lot of people don't know, and most Protestant Bibles today, including the King James Bible you have today, you do not have the Apocrypha, the 7 books that Martin Luther removed from the Bible, which are also in the Guttenberg Bible. And so the first edition of the King James Bible, obviously a different take on this, a different translation, but did have all 7 books that you will find in the Catholic Bible today. So I do have it opened up to the Apocrypha page here. In 1630,
let's take a closer look at the page that you have.
I can bring this in a little bit.
No, you're fine. We've got it now.
Got it?
Yeah.
There we go. But this book, the second edition of this book came out in 1639, when at that point the 7 books of the Apocrypha were removed. So kind of an interesting fact there, and a lot of people do not know that Mary Queen of Scots' son is the one who had this commissioned and put together. So, but a very, very, very beautiful piece here. And here at the Jubilee Museum, you get to experience all these books that you've just seen today, these beautiful Bibles, as well as Missale Romanums and Ultramissals. Our oldest book is the Missale Romanum, which is an Ultramissal from 1501. So obviously, and then going back before the Guttenberg, it would have been handwritten. So we have very early books on the printing presses, and if we don't have the originals, we do have beautiful copies.
How many books do you have there at the museum, would you say? What would you guess?
Every week, so they keep coming in. We have a lot of Bibles that people donate here. The Bibles, those beautiful old Bibles you may have at home, for those of you who are listening, the ones that have the real deep covers on them. These were made in Germany, and some of them are in Latin, some are in English. But the 1880s, 1890s was not a good time. The paper was really not good. So we get phone calls about once a week. I've got an old Bible here, it's completely crumbling. What do I do with it? And so I hope that the Catholics and non-Catholics listening to this hear this. We will dispose of the Bibles properly.
Okay.
And we absolutely we bury these books. So a lot of these Bibles are blessed, as well as a lot of Catholic things. But it should not just be thrown in the trash or discarded. We'll take care of them properly here. So that offer is out on the table if anybody wants to bring your old books down. But,
okay. Well, you have numerous books in your collection.
Yeah. So we do have a lot of Lutheran Bibles. We do have a Lutheran Bible from the 1600s, or I'm sorry, early 1700s, that as well has all 7 books of the Apocrypha in it, which is kind of interesting.
You do have a lot of interesting books, and we thank you very much for the time that you have spent with us, and we hope that people will visit the Jubilee Museum in Columbus, Ohio, in Franklintown, the oldest part of Columbus. Thank you very much.
Thank you much. Thank you, Wanda.
See you next month.
Look forward to it.
All righty. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching.